Policy for All. Today I have the great fortune to be interviewing Zeph, who is the director of the main youth in Maine. I'm really honored that she has chosen to be with us on our last week of on the end of the month. She'll be retiring from that position, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you very much for coming in.
It's my pleasure, Liz.
So you're retiring. Can you share with us one or two of the most important or useful issues that you have worked on during your time with AUCD?
Well, Liz, it was really difficult to kind of think about one or two of the policies, because what I see as all of the little pieces that come together to move forward what I consider to be our central policy, and that is the DD Act. And so I see the DD Act as central to all of the work that we do in the network, and something that has contributed really at a very fundamental level to moving disability policy across the board in this country. And, for me, the DD Act, the guiding principles at the beginning of the Act really guide so much of the other policy work that we do through our network, and I think has really influenced other networks as well.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, with the anniversary of the ADA, which we're very excited about, coming up, and other anniversaries coming up, what do you think has been the biggest impact on people with disability lives?
Well, again, I think that, no one piece does it all, but with the two big anniversaries that come to mind, both the ADA and the 40th anniversary of IDEA, I think that together they form such a fundamental foundation for so much of the work that we've done. So, with the ADA kind of picked up where the Rehab Act ended, and IDEA really has all of the reauthorizations of IDEA, which were so fundamental since 1975 for the real civil rights of children with developmental disabilities in particular, gaining access to an education. So that it was, for many kids with disabilities, it was refining their education, but for kids with developmental disabilities, many of whom were not allowed to participate in education, it was such a critical piece of civil rights legislation for them, because for the first time, the language in there that said, children with disabilities, regardless of the severity of their disabilities, had the right to an education. And that was a game changer from my perspective, and maybe it's because I'm an educator that I think of it this way, but children were now allowed that civil right to an education that other children had. And so this was, to me, with the 40th anniversary coming up, it's a time for reflection of what impact the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act had in 1975, and now what we call IDEA, really did for kids with disabilities. And And for kids with developmental disabilities, I think that the impact has been even greater.
Thank you. Another additional question, since you were talking about education, is I really believe that education and jobs have a lot to do with the fact that people don't have a lot of job opportunities. Maybe here at the USED or at the AUCD, but in the general world, I don't think that's the case. So, what's the future with you just saying that? Do you think the education is part of the issue about getting people jobs?
Yeah, I think that it's really critical. I think that some of the in several of the reauthorizations now of what is now IDEA, what we've seen is a focus on transition, which really gets people thinking about what is life after school, what is the purpose of education for kids with disabilities, and it's not an end unto itself. It is, preparing people for full lives in the community. And what I love about the interrelationships of all these policies and the work that we do through the network is to see how they relate to one another. So the DD Act that really kind of brought in the last reauthorization in particular some of the language of empowerment and self-advocacy and self-determination into play, and really talked about employment outcomes for people with, regardless of the complexity of their disabilities. It really is a game changer. It makes us really look at what constitutes full participation and full citizenry for everyone. And that access to education became the first step. And now that we've had an opportunity over the years to start looking at refining, getting kids into the school door, and in the reauthorization of 1997 of IDEA, we got access to the general education curriculum, which said that everyone needs to learn the fundamentals of citizenship and full participation as part of their education. That general education curriculum was for everyone. And now we've learned over the past 20 years what that might look like. How do we follow through and articulate that in ways that make for meaningful education? And that education becomes the foundation for continuing educational opportunity as lifelong, but also for work, for full citizenship participation, for self-empowerment and advocacy for others in the network. And I think that, to me, that's the interrelationship of those things. And I see the DD Act as the guiding light for the basis for a lot of that.
Thank you. What are your hopes for people with disability as we go forward in the future?
Liz, I think that we've laid a foundation for that, and I can think of two things in particular. Going forward, I'm hoping that all of the progress that we've made in self-advocacy forms the foundation for really thinking about ways in which people with disabilities can really formulate and lead the policy direction for the future for policy that affects their lives. And one of the things that I've been working on for the last several years has been the concept of using the principles of universal design in the creation of public policy. And what that means is creating public policy that works for everyone. And if we approach public policy from that perspective, then there's no piece of policy that we engage in that contributes to the governance of the country and our states that people with disabilities wouldn't be fundamental to having a voice in. And so the two pieces that I see coming together are the strengthening voices of individuals with disabilities and the broadening of the scope of public policy so that all public policy, the test for all public policy is if it works for everyone. And that means that the voices of people with disabilities become more critical than ever, not just for disability, what we think of as disability policy, but for all human policy. So anything that affects our country and the people in our country really becomes part of the agenda in the lives of people with disabilities to participate in fully and to affect in some ways. And what I think happens then is not just that people with disabilities benefit, but the entire society benefits because then we get better policy for everyone. And I think that's the greatest contribution that we can make as a field and the enhanced role of individuals with disabilities and their families in the public policy of the future. That's the gift.
Thank you. And that's in some ways, that's exactly the purpose of why I wanted to do Tuesday with Liz. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Liz, I have to tell you that Tuesday with Liz has become my favorite. So thank you for giving me access today to talk to people, but also for the work that you're doing and the contributions that you're making that makes policy accessible and meaningful to everyone. So thanks.
Thanks. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Well, given the fact that I am retiring and that I am leaving the network in my official capacity anyway, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to AUCD, thanks to the network. It has provided many opportunities for me, and it's my family, and I'm going to miss everyone. So I want to thank everyone out there who has been so kind and generous to me over the years, and for the many well wishes that I've received. So thanks, Liz, and thanks to the network. I'm going to miss everyone.
Thank you. And if you have any questions about this or or any other policy issues, please go to the AUCD webpage and look for this week's Interveiw. If you have any questions or comments about this week's Tuesdays with Liz, please leave them in the space below. Thank you and have a nice day, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks, Liz, and we'll miss you and we love you. Bye.